Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly business talk show, MarketWatch 360. And tonight, we're having a phenomenal guest. And then I am actually super nervous, but excited. And I've been thinking about what am I going to see when I'm driving over to the studio. But here he is, and Brian, and he is... he's just amazing, and I don't even know what's better word to describe him. Well, and he's the leader of multiple organizations. He's the president of Rotary Club for Global Actions, and he just hosted and organized one of the amazing worldwide fundraising events. And he is also a business consultant. And he is also a worldwide traveler, and he's on board of nonprofit organization and just a lot. And then I'm ready to dive into this amazing conversation with Brian. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for those kind words. I don't know if I'm amazing, but it's
you are. You're phenomenal.
Thank you.
So to start with. Would you like to share a little bit about your background and some of the advice and that you would give to our audiences tonight?
Sure. So I actually, my original background was in fashion. I worked in the fashion industry for decades in Hollywood. I was a fashion stylist, so I primarily dressed celebrities and mostly for music videos, but I also worked full-time for a Spanish fashion magazine. And then I got in the mid 90s, I sort of got into developing websites. And so I created an online website for teenage girls. And It was sort of back, there really wasn't such thing as blogs and zines and that kind of thing. And
that was before internet age, right?
It was the beginning. So it was probably about 1996 is when I launched it.
And, you're a pioneer of the internet.
I don't know. Right? I mean, especially not compared to people up here. But, you know, we launched and it was really well received, and we were very fortunate. We got support of a lot of teen celebrities at the time, Britney Spears and NSYNC and those kind of bands, and so we were able to amplify that. And then I just really got into working in the internet and kind of using that as a tool for how I could promote different things. And then I had my own business that was focused on men's fitness and men's health, and I had been working on it very hard and putting a lot of time and energy into it. And I had a family of my grandfather got really sick, and so I went to take care of him. And while I was taking care of him, my income didn't change from all that work I was no longer putting into it. And I realized that maybe I was putting the wrong focus in different areas. So I decided to get into the nonprofit world, and I started at an organization here in the Valley called Project Happiness that was based in Palo Alto, and started by this amazing woman, Randy Taryn. And that was really how I got into nonprofit work. And I just kind of used the skill set that I'd always used in the fashion industry and translated it into the nonprofit industry, because it's really, a lot of people in the nonprofit world have this savior complex, like they're going to save the world and make it a better place. And I think that that's an important goal, but you also, there's a way to do that that's actually much more
efficient,
communicable to the general population, right? Like it's if you market it right, people understand what you're trying to do. And so that's really what I've tried to do. And so like the event that you were talking about, we're both in Rotary, and I think that Rotary has a history of being a certain type of organization that is historically very conservative. It tends to be, the perception is that it's a lot of older white men. And I'm older, but I'm none of those other things, and I'm a man, but I'm not super conservative. And I really was like, how can we start doing this in a different way? How can we start really reaching out to different audiences? And so that's what that event was really about, is how could we do something on a global level? And thank you. You were an amazing part of that. And the team that put that together, they were just phenomenal. I mean, it's weird because I get credit for it, but I was just such a small piece of it. The team really came together and did such an amazing job on that.
Well, you're just, I don't even know what to say. It was all my pleasure, first of all. And then you're just so humbled because we wouldn't put it all together without you. You're the core part of the entire, worldwide fundraising event, right?
Well,
and then so as you just mentioned, that you actually connect the nonprofit organizations to the marketplace, right? Is that the connection you found?
Well, so when I started working at Project Happiness here, I started out just doing their social media, and I was just volunteering most of my time, working officially 16 hours. And that sort of evolved quickly into 60 hours because I realized that the marketing communications piece was so important for that organization. And through that, I started working in partnership with other organizations, which is how I met the Dalai Lama Foundation, which was based here in Palo Alto or in Redwood City. And so I started working with them. And so when I left Project Happiness, I went to start working with the Dalai Lama Foundation. And again, it was taking a lot of the skill sets that I had, not just the communications piece. I started to develop fundraising and a lot of those other skills that are important for nonprofit work. But all of that is really dependent on the marketing piece, right? Like it's about telling a good story that really makes people want to engage with what you're doing.
Right.
And so I started doing that, and I worked with His Holiness and his foundation there for a few years. And through that, I then met Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who is a good friend of the Dalai Lama. And we just kind of had an instant connection. I was in South Africa, and I was doing some promotional stuff for the Dalai Lama and met the Archbishop. And I knew that I had to get involved with his work. And so I actually...
Why was that?
So I think that the Dalai Lama is amazing, and working with him is one of the greatest honors of my life. However, there's still like a disconnect from him because he's almost like he's a god to so many people, really. I mean, he's really like the head of this faith, and the Archbishop was much more relatable on a human level. Right. Where, like, for example, I tell the story. The first time my husband met the Archbishop, we were in his daughter's backyard at a barbecue, and they're drinking whiskey and licking barbecue sauce off their fingers. And so you don't do that with the Dalai Lama. No. So I think that's not spiritual. So I think that's really, the Archbishop is spiritual, but also he's much more human. And so I was actually there when we did the transition, when they were writing the Book of Joy, which is a book that they wrote together. And I was super involved in the communications piece for that on the Archbishop's side. And I think that the amazing thing about that was that the Dalai Lama was able to help through his image, bring Archbishop Tutu back into the collective consciousness of people, because I think, he's very old right now, right? And a lot of people don't know who he is, younger people. And so I think that was something that was amazing from that. On the flip side, I think the Archbishop really humanized the Dalai Lama, because he was able to talk to him in this way that's like we're talking, right? Like we're friends, and we're able to have this communication, and not be so differential, that the way that so many of us are, because we're just, oh my gosh, it's somebody, and he just looks at him as a fellow person and friend, and I think that came across in that book. And so I think it was a really important thing. And so I was really honored that I was part of the team that was able to do a lot of communications on that, both here in the States and in South Africa. So,
wow, so far it's a lot. But I see that it's a lot of transitions as well in your story. At this point, it's kind of like after pandemic, but not really like wide open back to normal yet. And majority people are making transitions in their lives. So what is your advice for the community? And because people are so scared about making transitions and scared of uncertainties.
I think, I was telling my story once to some younger people. This was before the pandemic. And this guy in his early 20s came up to me, and he's like, how do you get these opportunities? And how do you do it? And I think that it's two things. One, you have to be open to them. So things come up and you're like, oh, I don't know. Can I do this? And you have to be willing to take a chance. That is a key part of it, because there's not everybody has, not everything works out. I mean, I've done things that haven't worked out. I've done many things that haven't worked out. Many things that haven't worked out. But I still keep being willing to take a chance, because some of them are going to work out. And I think that is a lot of self-confidence. You have to be able to feel that you can make something work. And I think the other piece is to really ask for opportunities. I got my position working with Archbishop Tutu because I asked for the job. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine actually on the Google campus. We were having lunch there, and I was telling the story about how so many people would volunteer to work with the Dalai Lama Foundation because they just had such a love for him. And I'm like, while I have a love for him, I'm not going to work for free, right? And I'm like, the only time I've ever really felt like that connection to a person was Archbishop Tutu. And suddenly this like light bulb went off, and I'm like, why don't I just offer to work for them? And so I sent them an email, and I was like, hey, I we met briefly at this event in New York, and you don't know me very well, but you guys have great programs and you have nobody to implement them. And I'm like, let me implement them, and I will figure out a way to fundraise to pay for my salary.
Wow.
And
that's literally what
that's exactly what I sent. That's the message I sent.
Wow.
And I heard nothing for 3 weeks, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have messed up this relationship, and they're going to think I'm an idiot and whatever. And then I got an email from the executive, or from the chairman of the board of the foundation, and he's like, we didn't know how to respond to your message, because it was just like the day before I sent the message, they had been given a grant from the Carnegie Foundation to hire an executive director.
Wow.
And they're like, would you be willing to apply for this position? And I was like, okay. And so I did, and I got it. And it was, but it was really just because I asked for this opportunity, right? And I think that's
it's also kind of like entrepreneurship too. Right. You just need to figure out, and also you're not just asking for an opportunity. You're actually offering a solution too.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's
you
part of it.
found an issue, and you also at the meantime you found the solution.
Right.
And then you're not asking for money. You're asking support and paying for yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think that was, I had faith in myself that I could fundraise to pay myself. I had no intent. I had no idea that they already had the money to pay for me, and it was just sort of this like I just took a chance on it, and that I think is taking this chance. I think that's something that the pandemic has actually shown us, is that we live in a different world, and we're all trying to figure out what it is right now, right? And so, if you can identify an opportunity, take a chance. Tell people that you're willing to try and figure out a way to make this work, and it might not work. I mean, again. I was working with an organization prior to the pandemic that, because of the pandemic, we lost all our funding and we had to shut it. I had to separate myself. It's still functioning, but I think that the reality of it is that things sometimes don't work, but that's okay, because then you can pivot. And so for me personally, I kind of took that as an opportunity. Like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, my work is very much based around peace and about human rights. And I had been, I had worked for an organization that was an anti-slavery human trafficking organization after Archbishop Tutu. And so I know a lot about that. I speak a lot about that. And then I knew a lot about communications and marketing and nonprofit management. And I was like, what can I do? And I decided I would start consulting. And so I started reaching out to people and kind of offering, this is what I can do for you. And again, it was sort of the same thing. It was like, yeah, we need that. And some of them I do find a way to kind of fund it myself, but that's kind of like any kind of entrepreneur, right? You got to figure out where the money's going to come and how you're going to pay yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So you just started your own consulting business.
Right. So I do a lot of public speaking, and so that was kind of how I started getting into it. And I speak a lot both on human trafficking. I speak a lot on human rights, LGBT
Is there any question? Hey, welcome back. And sorry, we just got cut off by the internet. And we were just talking. I was just talking with Brian. This is kind of embarrassing. We're in Silicon Valley, and we're actually in the core, like internet world of the entire globe. But for some reason that we got cut off.
I was speaking to there's this organization called World Merit that did this big launch of QS World Merit this spring, and I was one of the keynote speakers. And as soon as I was supposed to go live, and I live in Woodside, but so Silicon Valley, the internet drops.
Wow.
And fortunately, I had pre-recorded something as a backup, so they had that to show, but I couldn't do the Q&A or anything. And then suddenly my internet comes back on, and it's some kid on the side of a volcano in Mexico, and his internet's perfect. And I'm just like, I don't know.
Wow.
So maybe it's because too many people here are using it. I don't know.
Right. And by the way, so you know that this is we're doing the live. there is no pre-recorded, and so just try to interact with as much as you can, and you can commenting below in the show, and then so that way we can ask many questions and about Brian. You have amazing story, right? Obviously, and right now people are struggling about marketing,
mm-hmm.
and then do you have any advice for marketing, especially for the local and small business owners, and how do they tell their story? How can they market themselves and to reach more people in the community?
I think, so I don't have experience as a small business in that way. However, I think that the thing that the thing I took from the fashion industry that I then took to my internet businesses and then to the nonprofit world, it's really the same thing. It's about telling a story. It's about finding why people care about what you're doing, right? And so whether that's, you're an accountant, but you've been doing this as a family thing for so many years, or you're really, you do this, but you're also in your spare time, working in a food pantry, telling stories that are compelling to people, that make them see you as a human. And I think that's, there's very much, and most of my experience really is I do a lot of social media marketing. But being able to tell a story and being able to seem human to people, like, so that they care about you, right? Because I think that one of the things that you saw when the pandemic started was that we all have, like, for example, restaurants that mm-hmm. we love, right? And mm-hmm. that we were going to, and suddenly the ones that shifted to, takeout, we loved them. We felt this connection. So we were going there and taking out, and we were supporting them as much as we could because we felt connected to them. We wanted to do it. And so I think that, like, the key thing about marketing, no matter what level you're doing it on, if it's an international or local, is connecting to people, telling your story, and being able to make people feel engaged with what you're doing. And I think that that's the beauty of social media, right? I mean, like right now we've got, I don't know how many people are watching, but you're able to bring this show to people all over the world, right? Mm-hmm. And it will definitely connect with people that you don't know or even being touched by it. Mm-hmm. And someday you're going to see that. Someday you're going to be at something and somebody's going to be like, oh my gosh, Nancy, I know you because, you do this show, and it'll be somebody from, like, Pakistan, right? And they'll have seen this show happening in Silicon Valley, and they're like, and I used something that I saw on that to, like, do that. And so I think that that's really key when you're trying to do it. And I think that the other thing is finding creative ways to tell your story, whether mm-hmm. that's through Instagram Live, or whether that's through partnering with other organizations or companies to do it. Actually one of our club members, his name is Manyang, and he's one of those Sudanese lost boys. So he was a refugee from Sudan. And when he came to the U.S., he got he became a citizen, and then went through all his education and decided he wanted to do something. So he started a coffee company called 734 Coffee. Mm. And 734 was the coordinates of the refugee camp that he lived in Africa. And so he started this company, and this guy gets out there and he tells his story, and he takes his coffee and he'll go to the UN and he'll be like, look, this is my story, and we give a percentage of it all back to refugees, and and let me do it. And then when he does that, he's like, I'm at the UN and here's my coffee and here's this person drinking my coffee. And I think that sharing that, because I think that people want to then get more involved with him, right? And they engage with him because he's getting out there and he's telling the story that people care about. And I think that that's what it is that just convincing people to find a reason to care about what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you mentioned about the creative ways and to tell your story.
Right.
Actually, I got the opportunity and to be part of the worldwide fundraising event. It's actually because of the show, right? And you
100%.
Watched the show,
Yeah.
and you told me that, Nancy, I watched a couple of your shows and I like the show. And then would you be willing to be part of this event?
Right.
And I was like, wow, I like. It was like out of blue. I had no clue.
And you were amazing, first of all. So Nancy helped us co-host this event. And it was, so really what the goal was, we were fundraising for girls' education in Liberia through the Bowie Peace Foundation. Lema Bowie is the founder of that. She's a Nobel laureate from Liberia. And we decided we were going to have this like global event. So we had musicians from around the world performing for this thing.
Right.
And
we had a lot of celebrities too.
There was, Gloria Steinem was there, Pete Townsend, and Amanda Wyss, who's an actress out of Los Angeles, just people from all over the world. But you were given, and I didn't realize until after the fact, the hardest names to pronounce. And you just nailed every single one. It was amazing. I was just like, I didn't even think about that when we were doing it, but you just like got every single one. It was perfect.
Wow. Even just, few minutes, right? My segments are just few minutes. And thank my amazing production team. Right. We actually took a couple days and for those segments. Wow, it's just it's
all of you did an amazing job.
It's such an honor to be part of this worldwide event. Right. Such an honor, and it's gonna be in my history, and it's my story too. Right, and to be part of this amazing event, and then I definitely will be like taking care of that.
And
right?
Because this is about marketing communications, right?
Right.
It was called the Negus Worldwide Party. And if you go to Facebook page for Rotary Club for Global Action or for Negus World, you can actually watch the whole event live. It was, if I do say so myself, it was an amazing event. But
yeah, it is.
But it really was because of all the people that came together to really do good in the world, right? I mean, that's what it was about. All these people volunteered their time and their energy. And some of them were super famous. Some of them were, super wealthy, but everybody came on board to like really do this. And then there was also people who just donated their time to get out there. There was people that were working. We had production happening here in the Bay Area. We had it happening in Canada, in New York,
over the world,
in Spain. It was like all over. And it was really just so cool to see so many people. And it resonated with people, it was that. Because it was something that I think that everybody saw the effort and that people were really passionate about doing it, it's a lot of people have followed up wanting to get involved in both the organizations, all the organizations that were involved. There's 3 organizations, and as well as the Rotary Club, and the people within Rotary really, saw it as something different because it's not often that you have Ugandan hip hop artists at a Rotary International event. So I think that that really spoke to people as well too. So
definitely. Right now, people are the business is kind of like backing up, but the thing is they're struggling about the relationship, reconnect the relationship with their employees. And you just mentioned about, because of the event, and you were able to brought people and brought the production teams all over the world together. And it's definitely what we talked about a little bit before the show, right? It's your leadership. And I'm asking this question is just kind of like from my personal interest.
Yeah.
Like, what is the advice that you can give to like the business owners that they're struggling with handling their relationship with the employees, but you're doing this worldwide event and connecting people from all over the world from different levels of their lives, and how were you able to do that?
I think that it's a couple things. I think that part of it, and they're actually very interconnected, but it's you have to approach, and this is coming from somebody with bright pink hair, but you have to approach something as like being your authentic self, right? And I think that authenticity is something that, I spent a lot of time in my life trying to fit into a box of what I thought people wanted me to be. And I was like, oh, if I do this, then I won't be able, people will judge me for this, and I won't be able to succeed in this area. And I realized that once I started really being myself and being, what I wanted to, doing what I wanted to do, in a way that doesn't hurt other people, right? Mm-hmm. But doing what I wanted to do, people connect to that. People really feel that authenticity. Now, I think when it comes to employees, it's very much a couple things. One, being very honest with them about the situation you're in. Mm-hmm. We were doing this event. We had very, very little money. No money. And we had about $500 for the whole event. And,
that's true. And everybody is a volunteer.
Right. But letting people know this is what we're doing. This is what we want you to get into. And we would really love you to be part of it. And also understanding that sometimes people aren't going to be able to do that and being okay with that. Like, it's not a personal affront if somebody says no to you on something. Sometimes it's just really like, I can't do this right now because I have to pay bills. So I can't, if you run a dog grooming company and you've got a bunch of dogs, it's like, oh, well, I can't stay later because I have to pick my kids up. Sometimes they can stay later because of whatever, So I think that there's having an honest dialogue with everyone that's kind of in your orbit, whether that's through a business thing or whether that's just, in your interpersonal relationships, your friends, your family, whoever it is. I think that really inspires people to want to do more, to like work with you, right? And I think I think we saw a lot of that during COVID, because I think that the employers who were really doing whatever they could to make sure that their employees were taken care of were not, for the most part, impacted quite in the same way as those who were like, oh, shutting down. And I think that employees who are also understanding that this is like a situation that we're all in, also sort of were like, okay, well, I'm going to try and do whatever I can to make things work out. And I think that there is a level. I think that depending on the situation, right, there's a level of privilege with everything. And so some of us it's much easier for us to be like, oh, I'm gonna take off and apply for a job with Desmond Tutu because, I know that like financially I'm still going to be fairly okay no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. And that isn't always the case for everybody. And I think that is something that we also have to be honest and respectful for. And so that like if you're an employer and you have employees that they need this job, they need that next paycheck, well, then you have to really be honest about where you're at in your life. And if you guys can't do this, then let them be honest and say, hey, I can't do this either. I have to find something that can actually pay my bills. So, I don't know.
Yeah, you just mentioned about, authenticity inspire people, right? And I have to be honest that I am inspired by that. I know that I mentioned that multiple times, that if you wanted me to say one thing about you, that's just authenticity. That's the thing stay in my mind, and it's been ever since I met you, ever since I know you. It's just that I just
Thank
felt
you.
that
that's really nice.
that's just felt like we had many like meetings in our Rotary Club. Yeah. And then every time when I joined the meeting, well, I was in the different Rotary Club prior to be part of our club, and then like you just mentioned, it was like typical and traditional Rotary Club, but our club just bring very different style, and it's just relaxing, and then you feel comfortable to be part of the meeting.
Well, and I can tell you that's what works for me. That's what works for, I think, most of the people in our club, but it doesn't work for everybody. And some people love tradition. They love, I think for example, I'm not Catholic, but I love the pageantry that goes with the Catholic Church and events. I love when they do, the incense and the parades, and I love all of that stuff. So I think that, there's for some people, though, they would get really turned off by something like that because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is just ridiculous. It's a waste of time, blah, 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 blah. And so I think that really, you have to find what you connect to personally. And also you have to try things out. I mean, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. And if they don't work, it's not the end of the world for the most part.
Don't
usually.
take that personal.
Right.
Yeah.
and move on to the next thing, I think is really what, you can be doing in that situation. I think with authenticity, like I said, I spent a lot of time in my career, especially early on, trying to fit into a box of what I thought people wanted me to be. And then when I got into the nonprofit world, I sort of fell into that again a little bit, but not as much. But I worked at an organization recently, not recent, but a couple years ago. And while I was there, we were doing this project with many of the world's faith leaders, and one in particular. And I was told I couldn't be too gay. And I was like,
wow.
Okay, first of all,
that's very offensive.
Well, it was like because they were the logic was that if I was too gay, then they would stop working with us, right? Because the leader of this church is not very supportive of homosexuals, and so I was like, okay, well, what we're doing is really important, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna kind of like temper who I am. And first of all, I'm not even sure what too gay is. Like I'm just kind of like I'm not
Right.
acting. It's just who I am. But I think that I went through this thing and I kind of, it just felt so wrong while I was doing it. And it was even to the point where like, I would be at an event and I was at an event with somebody and he came up to me and he's just like, you're hiding, you're just, something about you is just shut down. And he's like, I want to know what this thing is. And it was because I was like, I don't talk about my family life. I don't talk about any of these things because that's part of who I am. And the weirdest thing is I actually left that. And that was one of the main reasons I left. And now I do the exact same work, and I'm doing it with all these faith leaders around the world, Pope Francis and Sheikh Bashir and Rabbi Rosen, like all these major faith leaders of all the major world's religions. Zero problems. Nobody has a problem with who I am. They don't have a problem with my pink hair. They don't have a problem with fashion. They don't, none of that, right? It's just like, that's who I am, and I'm the best person to be doing this job. And so there's a respect there.
It's also because they're strong in faith. They're
Right.
strong in faith. They're rooted. I'm also very spiritual and faithful person
Right.
myself. And I don't see any problem. Like all I see is your authenticity. That's something super like different and, just stands you out. And it's just something that, people will remember you because of that.
That's really, that's such a huge compliment. Thank you. I like,
And I
it's
mean,
embarrassing actually.
no, don't be. And I have been in different organizations,
Yeah.
And I have seen a lot of amazing, leaders in the world as well. But most of them, you see them one side, but then they're doing things in a different ways, and they're not the same person.
Right.
And then you just felt that, wow, it's very sad. And, if you know the story behind the scene and it's not matching who they were in front of the
Sure.
screen.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that part of that too is that I realized probably about 10 or 15 years ago that for every person that was going to be turned off by who I am, what I do, whatever, who I'm married to, any of that stuff, there's going to be 10 people that resonates with, And I also realized when I was asked to sort of like temper who I am and my sexuality, doing that is not just a disservice to me, but it's doing a disservice to people like all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I was in Saudi Arabia. I was invited to speak several years ago, and at the time it was Mohammed bin Salman, who's now the crown prince, that invited me to speak there, and I was speaking on like what Saudi Arabia could be doing to come into a modern age, right? And I said on stage, I'm like, if Saudi Arabia is serious about that, they need to start addressing the rights of women and girls, of the disabled people, and of the LGBTQ plus community. And I got off stage and it was like, totally, people were nice and whatever. And I'd get onto Twitter and suddenly I have like 80 some messages from people like, finally, people are like addressing gay rights in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But that night I flew to Frankfurt and I was with this Olympic athlete, and we both landed. He was on stage right after I was, and we landed in Frankfurt, and we turned our phones on, and both of us our phones are blowing up because of this event. And I have death threats. I have like
Wow.
hundreds and hundreds of people calling for my death because I'm talking about like gay rights in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And it was freaky, right? Because I've never had that level, you know, I mean, you face things here, but not on the level where you actually feel like where people are actually calling for you to be put to death, right? And so I think that, but the thing that was really impactful about that was over the next month, 2 months, even to this day sometimes, I would get messages from people throughout the Middle East, and they were like thanking me for being authentic and for telling the story and speaking out. And I realized at that point that I need to do that. I need to like be authentic and when I'm talking about stuff, because it impacts more than the immediate people that we're just reaching right now. It impacts a lot of people across the world. And so I think it's important to do that. And so when I came, you know, I was in Rotary in my 20s, and then I left for a while, and then I came back into it probably about 10 years ago. And I, again, you know, when I first joined, I was very kind of like, it's conservative, I have to be careful. And now I'm not. I'm the opposite of that, right? And there's probably Rotarians watching right now that are like, he's really not.
But you, like, something that we have to give credit to you, that you made our club, you know, fun. You made our club really
well, I think
different.
that people make it fun. I kind of started it, but I think that like
a
lot of the people in the club have really done a lot to make it fun. But it was really great because I realized when I started being my authentic self, now I'm also on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force for Rotary International. So I'm part of a group of about 12, it was 12 last year, I'm not sure how many are in this year, but that look at the work that Rotary is doing around the globe, the clubs, how the breakup of things, and what we can do to make it more inclusive. Because I think that, you know, while it has this image of being for old white conservative men, that's not the reality.
No.
There are those people, and that's great, because we need those people as much as we need young Asian women, and we need, you know, Black kids from Canada, and we need gay guys with pink hair in Woodside, right? So I think that like that's really what will help this organization thrive. Exactly. And that's kind of when I do a lot of the work with the organizations that I do, we look at that piece, like how are we making sure that we're inclusive in that. And I think that that is something that can trickle down, you know, back to the local communities, right? Is that if you are making an effort to be inclusive, whatever your business is, it's going to be more successful. Of
course.
You know, and you might suffer a little bit from a couple people who have been previous, but I think at the end of the day, your net is going to be positive of people that really are engaged with what you're doing.
I totally agree on that. So talking about Rotary, and then during pandemic, you started our club, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
What brought you that thought and to initiate this amazing club?
I normally in my normal life travel a ton. I'm usually gone a week or two a month, and suddenly I'm at home with nothing to do. But I think part of the other thing is that you know, we talk about Rotary, but the full name of Rotary is Rotary International, right? And so for me, the key thing about Rotary was really it's the international piece. I wanted to really strive to show that internationalness of the organization, and I think that that's something that sometimes we get lost in a lot of the clubs, and the clubs, you know, the clubs in the Bay Area, for example, do amazing local community service things. I just wanted to start doing amazing international things, and so the other piece that I really realized was that I have personally an amazing network of friends around the world who are doing fantastic things, but maybe for whatever reason they can't afford to be in Rotary. They've never asked to be in Rotary. They think that, you know, in some countries you have to be a certain age to be in it. And I'm like, so what if I created an international club full of these people to come together to do amazing international things? And last year we did so many amazing international projects. We provided these dignity kits in Kenya, which are they're like reusable pads and washed with soap and some other stuff for teenage girls in the Masai Mara, which is a tribe in Kenya. And then we also provide hand washing stations to 4 high schools in that region. Through one of our members, we we delivered 4.5 tons of food in May to the transgender community in Delhi. Like,
wow.
Which is insane. That's so much. Like, we talk about, some people talk about these things that they're doing, like, oh yeah, we did this, 0.5 ton, blah, blah, 4.5 tons. And it was really 2 people on the ground that were doing that. And because of the international way that we've set this up, we're able to like network through our club to people on the ground in all these different regions that we can actually be doing something. And so that's really what I wanted to do was create a space that we could be having this global interaction and really this conversation. And I really also wanted to spotlight, how we could build a culture of empathy for each other across borders, like so that you might not have a lot of interaction with somebody in Pakistan, but because of Radhika, who's a member, you can interact with her on a regular basis, or somebody in Nigeria or somebody in Hong Kong. I think that's the piece that I really wanted to do. Exactly, yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of the show. I really don't want to, I literally forgot the time, but before we end up the show, and you are well traveled, and like you just mentioned that you connect people worldwide, and then you definitely saw people from different part of the world and different part of the world, and we're all in the pandemic, right? So how were their lives in pandemic? How were their business in pandemic? And what is your takeaway from that?
I think, and I try not to get political about stuff, but I think that, we're very privileged at the moment where we're at in the US, and it drives me nuts because I have so many friends around the world who don't have access to vaccines. They're still in lockdowns. They can't work. I have my whole network of people in South Africa is still in lockdown. Like, they can't go out because of this. And they're just, Archbishop Tutu just got vaccinated this summer. And he's 80, he'll be 90 this year. So I think that they're just now hitting old people in places. And so I think that we have to recognize that while we sort of start seeing like, oh, we're on the tail end of this pandemic, or we see a light at the end of the tunnel, a lot of people aren't seeing that. A lot of people are where we were last May and June, right? Not this year, but 2020. And they have no idea how much time, when it's going to end, where it's going to go. And so I think that we have to really have that empathy for people around the world, and recognize that we have to, first of all, recognize the opportunities that we have and accept those and take those, and also do whatever we can to take care of each other, both here and abroad, right?
Mm-hmm. And also don't take the privilege for granted.
Exactly.
Right. Even though, yes, we're still suffering and the business is not back to normal, like 100% yet. And then a lot of people are still staying at home and without a job, but we're still privileged.
Right. And I think that's, a lot of people don't have that privilege. And I think that, and having gratitude for that, I think that's a really key thing, because, I have a lot of privilege, and I'm very grateful for all the opportunities that I have in my life. Right. And I think that people that aren't wanting to do certain things, take vaccines, wear masks inside, that's a level of privilege that's very shockingly embarrassing to me, because for me, I really think that that's not taking care of our fellow man. That's not doing something to really recognize that we're not all in the same position, and we have to start taking care of each other and do whatever we can to make this world a better place.
Exactly. And counting the blessings.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, like right now, this conversation, we're blessed having this conversation. And
I'm blessed to be here. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Wow. I think it's
honored that you asked me.
Yeah, it is our honor and privilege, and to get to know more about you and your story, and also like your connections in the world as well, and the amazing things that you have been doing to the community and to the world. And well, look at the commenting part. Well, we have a lot of comments tonight.
We might be doing it. We can't read it from here. So
yeah, we have a lot of comments tonight, and
it might be about my hair. So.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being here with us tonight. And we appreciate you. And especially I appreciate Brian tonight.
I really appreciate
so much.
you bringing me on.
And thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining the show. And this is a weekly show, and we'll see you next week at the same time, 7 p.m. every Thursday. Have a very good night. Bye, everyone.